All right, like a ship, the executive and National Assembly members make decisions that influence how well Nigeria sails. Well, the question tonight is how similar or different is the composition of Nigeria's next National Assembly. Babajide Ogunsanwo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, is here to provide insights about the 10th National Assembly. It's great to have you again, Babajide.
Pleasure is all mine.
Great. And of course, we are looking at the National Assembly, the 10th National Assembly. Tell us, what is it going to look like? Let's start with the upper legislative chamber, the Senate.
So the first is 119 seats are in the Senate. Elections have been concluded in all these seats, and all these states, except 8. But before we go into the numbers, there's something that this election shows. And I'd like to explain that before we go into the exact numbers. For centuries, we've been told that whenever two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. One thing that came out in this election is, especially the National Assembly election, showed that two elephants fought, yet the grass became greener. I'll go into that and explain exactly how two elephants fought, yet the grass became greener in this election, define history. But first, let's look at what is going on in the 10th Assembly. And if we take a look at the results from the Independent National Electoral Commission, especially if we look at what happened in 2015, 2019, and 2023, we'll see significant insights. Let's start with the table on the left, APC. 2015, when this election happened in the North Central that has 19 senators, the APC had 13 senators in 2015 in the North Central. In 2019, on February 24th, a day before the election, there were 12 senators in the North Central out of 19 senators from the APC. Based on the results we have right now, there are only 10 senators from the APC in the North Central, and there's only one more state that is outstanding from the North Central. In other words, the performance of the APC in the North Central as compared to February 24 is worse. In the Northeast, 19 Senate seats available in the Northeast. In 2015, when this election happened, the APC had 13 Senate seats. On February 24, a day to the election, the APC had 14 seats in the Northeast. Based on the results we have from INEC, in the Northeast, the APC currently has 9 seats in the Northeast. The challenge is there's only one more seat available based on INEC's supplementary election in the Northeast. Again, in the Northeast, compared to February 24, the APC is in a worse position. What about the Northwest? In the Northwest, there are 21 Senate seats available in the Northwest. We are still expecting results based on supplementary elections that will be held in the Northwest. We're expecting 5 more results from the Northwest. However, we know that when this election happened in 2015, APC won 20 seats in the Northwest. A day, February 24, a day to this election, APC still had 17 seats. Right now, APC has only 8 seats, and there are only 5 more seats available for grabs in the Northeast. What is going on in the Southeast? 15 Senate seats. We see a significant improvement there. 0 seats in 2015. A day to this election, the APC had 3 seats. APC has doubled its presence in the Southeast. 6 seats out of the 15 available seats in the Southeast. And in the South-South, there are 18 Senate seats available in the South-South. In 2015, the APC had only 1 seat. A day to this election, the APC had 3 seats. Now the APC has 7 seats in the South-South, an improvement from where it was before this election. Let's look at what happened in the Southwest. 18 senators are in the Southwest. In 2015, when this election happened, the APC had 13. On February 24, a day to this election, the APC had 14 senators out of the 18 possible senators in the Southwest. Now, APC has all the senators in the Southwest apart from Osun State. So in summary, for the APC, when it comes to the Senate perspective, they've lost in 3 major zones: North Central, Northeast, and the Northwest. And they've grown their market presence, their market share in the Southeast, South-South, and the Southwest. What about the PDP? Senate, we see 6 Senate seats in the North Central. A day to the election, this election, 7 Senate seats. We've seen a decline to 5. Same thing in the Northeast. APC started with 5. A day to this election, they had 2 seats. We've seen them improve, having more senators in the Northeast, 8 seats. Same thing in the Northwest. A day to this election, the PDP had 4 seats. Now they have 6 seats. And the Southeast is where we see a significant difference. Look at what has happened. In 2015, Ayo, the PDP had 15 out of all 15 seats in the Southeast. A day to the election, the PDP had 9 out of the 15 seats in the Southeast. Right now, the PDP has only 1 Senate seat in all of the Southeast, and that's in Enugu State. Look at the South-South. In 2015, the PDP had 17 out of all the 18 Senate seats in the South-South. A day to this election, the PDP had 15 out of 18 seats in the South-South. Now the APC only has 10 out of 18 seats in the South-South. And in the Southwest, we see a bit of stability for the PDP. 5 seats when this election happened in 2015. A day to this election, in 2019, 4 seats. And a day to this election, 4 seats. Now we see 3 seats. 3 seats. So in all, if you look at that bottom column, the APC, 63 seats prior to this election, now 55 seats. However, there are still 8 seats up for grabs. If the APC wins all the 8 seats, they get back to the position they were just before this election. What we see is the PDP 41 seats in the Senate before this election. Even if the PDP wins as well all the 8 seats, it'll be back to where it was before this election. So the summary is, at the upper chamber, we see the APC grow its strength in the southern region, while the PDP has grown its strength in the northern region.
But let's even talk about other political parties in the Senate, because I know, of course, there are some other parties making inroads into that. Do we have...
Yes, we have the facts. And if we jump to that third information where we look at why I talked about when 2 elephants fight, it's in Nigeria, the grass has grown greener even though 2 elephants are fighting. And if we take a look at that information, we will see the growth of other parties. And listen carefully to this, Ayo. In 2015, there were no other parties, apart from the APC and PDP, that had a senatorial seat. A day to this election, there were 5 parties that had senatorial seats when we went into this election. 5 parties had senatorial seats. 5 parties that were not the PDP or APC. Now, 13 senators are from these minority parties, compared to only 5. So the minority parties have more than doubled their performance in this election at the Senate. Now look at what's going on at the House of Reps. In 2015, there were only 8 other minority parties out of the 360 seats. A day to this election, the minorities had only 14 seats. And by minorities, again, we're talking about parties that are not APC, PDP. Now in the House of Reps, even though we are still expecting 13 supplementary elections, the minorities already have 62 seats. And so we see an election where 2 elephants have fought and the grass has grown greener. Quite clearly what had happened was while these 2 elephants were fighting, they dropped a lot of dung, Ayo. That is the position.
Very interesting. Well, let's look at the House of Representatives, because I'm very interested in that one. What's the surprising trend, or is there any surprising trend going on in the lower chamber?
Again, our history books are changing. Again, 2 elephants have fought, the grass did not suffer. Let's look at the House of Representatives and look at what is going on between the APC and PDP and how the minorities were able to make inroads. And if you look at the trends, first of all, we see that in 2015, when this election happened, APC had 212 House of Reps. A day to this election, the APC had 226 members. Now, even though we're still expecting 32 seats, supplementary elections in 32 seats, based on the results from INEC, the APC only now has 161 seats. In other words, even if the APC wins all these 32, it will not get to where it was a day to this election. Look at the PDP. PDP in 2015 had 139 seats. A day to this election, the PDP had 120 seats. PDP now has 105 seats, possibly might be able to get to 120 where it was before this election because there are still 32 seats available. So what we see is at the House of Reps, the APC significantly lost more than the PDP, but those that gained in both the upper house and the lower house was the grass. Two elephants fought, and yet in Nigeria, the grass became greener. How did the APC lose so much seats in the House of Reps? If we focus on that table by the left, we see the main challenge comes from two zones, the Northeast and the Northwest. In 2015, the APC, when this election happened, had 39 House of Reps members in the Northeast. A day to this election, the APC had 37 members from the Northeast. Now, the APC only has 22 members. In the Northwest as well, 87 House of Reps members came from the Northwest in 2015. When this election happened, 82. Now, just before this election happened, 82 seats. Now, the results from INEC shows the APC currently only has 34 seats.
That's a massive drop.
That's a massive drop. So that is the main challenge. But we've seen gains. We've seen the APC get more seats in the South-South, and we've seen that growth, especially across the different blocks, the different voting blocks in the South-South. So clearly, the APC is becoming more of a Southern party. The PDP is becoming more, based on these results, of a Northern party. And the minorities, while the APC and PDP are taking positions, the minority are coming in, and the grass is looking greener for them.
Which brings me to the next question. What impact, or how much impact will these minority parties have at the National Assembly this time around?
Significant impact. What it means clearly is that it's going to be the most noisy House of Assembly, National Assembly is going to be the most noisy.
Vocal.
Most vocal. There's going to be a lot of horse trading. There's going to be a lot of blaming. And it will take a lot of maneuvering for the president to be able to get assent to his bills. So in other words, the president's task has only just begun, especially if you look at the concerns over what will happen in the governorship election and if people will turn out to vote.
Which also calls to question, should we expect a higher turnout for the governorship and the state assembly elections? What are your thoughts on that?
So it really depends on which states you look at. There are going to be 28 elections, state governorship elections in the states, not 36, 28 elections in the states. But what we know is that there are some states that people and the citizens are focusing on. One state is Lagos. And if we take a look at the trends that have happened in Lagos, it's a bit of good and bad news. The good news is, okay, let's start with the bad news. Let's start with the bad news. The bad news is, if we look at that left table, we see for the second consecutive time, turnout is declining. In 2015, during the presidential election, 29 million people cast their votes. That was in 2015. In 2019, that dropped to 28.6 million. In this presidential election, only 25 million people. The challenge is approximately 25 million people cast their ballot in a country where you have 100+ million adults. In other words, only 1 in 4 eligible Nigerians cast their vote. So the minorities, the minorities had determined who became president. That is the bad news. But for Lagos, there's some good news. What we see is, right from 2007, in the presidential election, 1.2 million people voted in the presidential election. We saw a higher voter turnout for the governorship, 1.4 million. In 2011, 2 million people voted during the presidential election. Similar numbers voted during the governorship, 1.9. In 2015, similar numbers, 1.5 million, 1.5 million for the presidential and governorship. In 2019, there was a shock. Even though 1.1 million people voted in the presidential election, less than 1 million people determined who became the governor of Lagos State, a state that is the equivalent of an African country. Less than 1 million people brought Babajide to office. In this election, 1.3 million people voted in the presidential election. Based on these trends, we're expecting between 1 million and 1.2 million people to determine who becomes the next governor of Lagos. So what we've seen is the trends of voter turnout depends on the interest of the voters within the state. This is Lagos. We've seen some states where the voter turnout at the governorship level continually is significantly worse than the presidential election, which is voters turn out less during the governorship election. They turn out more during the presidential and turn out less during the governorship for some other states. But for Lagos, which is where a lot of people have their eye on for this Saturday, what we've seen is a mixed bag. Sometimes people turn out more during the governorship election, sometimes people turn out less. But what we understand is significantly less people are determining who leads the state. Lagos State Ayo has more than 10 million eligible adults, people that are over the age of 18, more than 10 million. Yes, yet only 1 in 10 people come out to vote. You understand what I mean?
It's really interesting. It's really interesting, but
10.
definitely, I'm sure we'll definitely keep our eyes on it because I'm really looking forward to it because a whole lot of talk going on social media, of course, for different parties and candidates. But well, we hope for the best.
And trust, in the next 3, 4, 5 days, we'll be doing all the analysis, all the permutations, all the combinations about which of the 20 local governments in Lagos State, and indeed across all the other 774 local governments in Nigeria, where the elections will be holding, 28 states. We'll be doing all the thorough analysis and be looking at history, and will history repeat itself? In some instances, we'll find out.
We'll definitely find out. Thank you so much.
Again, never forget, 2 elephants fought this time around in our National Assembly elections, yet
the grass is greener. Thank you so much, Babajide Ogunsanwo, our Channels Television's data analyst there, taking a look at the 10th National Assembly.